It's time for another spooky adventure with haunted history. Today, for Haunted History, we are going to the northern shrouded hemlock hills and hollows of central and northern Pennsylvania. There is a curious tale of a creature impossible to capture. A creature that looks much like John, the hometown historian, called a squonk. Ooh. The squonk, you would think, from talking about John, that he was an attractive creature. Instead, he is ugly. So they say that this squonk is reported to be one of the ugliest creatures, and it laments its ugliness constantly. So it goes around. You can easily track this creature because you see a trail of tears, because it's constantly, and you hear its squeals, and because it's sort of. It sounds like it's sometimes has the head of a pig, but its head almost is like squashed in, as you can see in the pictures here, and it's just sort of, it's like a cryptoid type creature where it's just sort of like reptile, mammal, like a whole plethora of creatures, all sort of amalgamation, I guess you could say, put into one, and it just doesn't work. And the creature apparently has mirrors or something, or looks in the water and it can see itself, and it just works itself up into tears constantly. And if you do actually follow it and capture it, its defense mechanism is that when it's cornered or captured, it deploys a unique way of getting away, where it just basically turns into a bag of water, a bag of tears. No one knows where it goes or anything. And it doesn't really honestly sound like, as much as it's, sort of one of those monster tales, it's really not a creature that's dangerous in any way. It's just a bizarre and weird creature, and it's got a bizarre and weird name, the squonk. I had actually never heard of this before I was reading this book, The Supernatural Lore of Pennsylvania, edited by Thomas White, and they tell this story. It's a small tale from Franklin County, more so, that they talk about. Is by a Gerald O'Neill, and it's a story and a tale, like a folk tale, that it was the fearsome creatures of the lumber woods. So I guess it's something that, it's not something that you would normally see. It's deep woods, wherever it might be. So it's very rare, and I guess as more and more of the habitat is gone, it's not seen. Maybe this is, from the tale, it sounds like it's a bunch of rubbish. It's sort of funny, and it probably is something that came over from Europe, because we talked about a lot of folk tales, and those types of things usually had their origins, say, in Eastern Europe, Germany, and then when you have a mixing of different cultures and stories, then you have a creature evolves that maybe, especially when it's like half pig, half whatever, and, it's more of a comical tale. And that was sort of, there's as weird as it is, there is a lot of German comic stories and stuff like that. They're usually still terrifying in some way, but in this case, it's just not. But yeah, it's possible, they say, after extensive logging of the hemlock forest in Pennsylvania, that this squonk exists there due to its habitat destruction. And then the logging camps would have moved west to the Great Lakes region and beyond. it's sort of in this sense that the story contains an element of community memory, and it's sort of cool how stories evolve like that. That it just sort of goes along in that regard. That it's just an oral, how tales get passed on from generation to generation. They do say like a little more information about the squonk. The range of the squonk is very limited, and they say few people outside of Pennsylvania have ever heard of this quaint beast. It's said to be fairly common in the hemlock forests of that state of Pennsylvania. The squonk is very retiring disposition, generally traveling about at twilight and dusk, and because of its misfitting skin, which is covered with warts and moles, it is always unhappy. In fact, it is said by people who are best able to judge to be the most morbid of beasts. Hunters who are good at tracking are able to follow squonk by its tear-stained trail, for the animal weeps constantly, and when cornered and escape seems impossible, or when surprised and frightened, it may even dissolve itself into tears. Squonk hunters are most successful on frosty moonlight nights when tears are shed slowly and the animal dislikes moving about because of the cold, because it really is. It's like a really gnarly skin, but it's in essence like a naked mole rat. It may then be heard weeping under the boughs of dark hemlock trees. They say this one guy had a disappointing experience with a squonk near Mount Alto. He made a clever capture by mimicking the squonk and inducing it to hop into a sack in which he was carrying it home, when suddenly the burden lightened and the weeping ceased. He unslung the sack and looked in, and there was nothing but tears and bubbles. So the name squonk is actually derived from the Latin words for tear, body, and dissolve. So like with a lot of these tales, there's sometimes, if they are more folk tales, there's sort of a reasoning behind it. So it can be a cautionary tale or a warning against melancholy disposition. However, this story was told to hardworking and hard-drinking lumberjacks, not children, and is more likely the product of delirium tremens than any pedantic impulse. Perhaps it serves as a cautionary tale to ugly lumberjacks or to ugly Johns, but and also, like I said, like the motive for squonk hunting is also unclear. It's sort of like, what's the purpose, other than they say the tears are valued by alchemists, and then perhaps the skunk was readily hunted into extinction, but lore makes no mention of using a waterproof sack for this purpose. Other dubious sources have suggested that the skin was the hunter's objective, but for obvious reasons, the squonk skins will never be found in any museum of cryptozoology or cryptozoology. The experience of the squonk hunter bears a curious resemblance to one variant of the snipe hunt, which is a practical joke or a fool's errand. So it may also be something like that, where it's more of, an older practical joke. But it's an interesting creature, and it is one of those things where it's primarily just Pennsylvania, because it's not even, like, from what I've read, it's not really well known at all outside of Pennsylvania. You think like any kind of creature, whatever it might be, the ugly squonk might be known further, because it's sort of a cool tale and it's sort of funny and weird. But so if you ever hear something weeping and going around, it's got small, misshapen, looks a little pig-like in the face, and it's just sad, you may have just seen a squonk if you're in Pennsylvania. If not, maybe they've migrated and you found one near you, or you see me and it's like, oh, it's a squonk. So I now know what I am. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. Once again, thank you for coming along another episode of Haunted History, and we will see you all about town.